Hello, Environmental 210 students. It's Dr. Caviglia-Harris here to explain changes in price and quantity. So I'd like to go over a couple of questions on shifts in demand and supply and explain how it is that when that happens that we have changes in the equilibrium price and quantity. Okay, so the first question is, what happens to the equilibrium price and quantity of pizza if consumers learn that it can contribute to a healthy lifestyle? Okay, so the steps for this as listed in your textbook are the following. First, we determine the curve that shifts. The second is determine the direction of the change. And third, we're going to use the graph to answer the question. So the first thing to do is to graph the market for pizza. So that means we need to include both a supply and a demand. And we'll start by marking off the original equilibrium price. We'll call that P1 and Q1. So that would be the original equilibrium price and quantity. So consumers learn that it can contribute to a healthy lifestyle. This is a determinant of demand. And more specifically, what we're talking about is a change in tastes and preferences. And because consumers learn that it's contributing to a healthy lifestyle, will increase the demand of pizza at every price. So this would be an increase in demand. Okay, so the first step is to determine which curve shifts. And because it's a determinant of demand, we know that demand shifts. Because it's an increase in improvement in lifestyle, we know that this is an increase in demand, or a shift rightward. And the third step is to use the graph to answer the question, and that would be more specifically to answer what happens to price and quantity. So we find the new equilibrium at the new intersection of supply and this new demand. And that tells us that the equilibrium price goes up and the equilibrium quantity also goes up. So the answer to the question is that the equilibrium price and quantity both increase. And notice, though, that this is also a movement along supply. We're moving from point A to point B. So when demand increases, we shift along the supply curve. The second question is, what happens to the equilibrium price and quantity of pens if the technology used to produce them improves? So to answer that, we're going to graph the market for pens. That means a downward sloping demand and an upward sloping supply. Then we'll follow those steps. First, we have to determine which curve shifts. So the technology used in production, that's a determinant of supply. That means the supply curve is going to shift. And since this is an improvement, this means that supply is going to increase or shift rightward. So we shift the supply rightward from S1 to S2, and then find the new equilibrium by looking at the intersection of this new supply and the demand curve. And what we learn here is that when supply increases, price falls and quantity goes up. So the answer to that question is that price increases and, sorry, that's not correct, price falls and quantity goes up. So notice that I don't have a QD, QS. This is the market or the equilibrium quantity. So we don't have to distinguish between quantity demanded and quantity supplied, because at this equilibrium, quantity demanded and quantity supplied are equal. So remember, we call that the equilibrium quantity, the equilibrium price, the market price, and the market quantity. And finally, notice that when supply increases, we move along the demand curve. So when supply increases, This is a movement along demand or a change in quantity demanded. Okay, so that's it. I will see you in the next video.